In the spirit of reconciliation, the Gravel Cycling Australia podcast acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today.
I'm just really stoked. I'm proud that we've got a format that the elite riders can have a great day at, as well as the weekend warriors and those who are new to the sport can have a great day at as well. And everyone can line up side by side at the start line, and with national champions or international riders and things. Through to, as I said, first timers all out there. Being stoked to ride bikes, and like I keep saying, that's sort of what it's all about for me.
Welcome to the Gravel Cycling Australia podcast. Gravel cycling in Australia is booming. From racing to bikepacking to simply getting off the beaten track and exploring the back roads and trails of our outstanding natural landscapes. This accessible subculture is all about community, adventure, and discovering or rediscovering the joy of life on two wheels. Join us as we celebrate Australia's gravel cycling scene and discover the locations, explore the events, and meet the people at the heart of the sport. So today on the pod, we are lucky enough to be joined by one of the pioneers in the gravel race scene here in Australia, Sam Maffett of Rapid Ascent Event Management, organisers of the Great Otway Gravel Grind event. I was lucky enough to head to the Great Otway Gravel Grind last year for my first ever gravel race experience and had a really great day out on the bike. I went probably a bit too hard out of the blocks and cracked with about 60 k's still to go, but gosh, yeah, it was a great experience to get out deep into the Otway forests and really experience gravel riding at its best and get in contact as well with the gravel riding community and meet some of the people who make this sport really what it is. Sam, thanks so much for giving up your time to join us on the Gravel Cycling Australia podcast.
Oh, thanks a lot, Tristan. Gee, you've gone out strong there saying we're a pioneer of gravel riding. Let's let remain to be seen. But yeah, look, we run a good race and we enjoy what we do.
So before we dive in, can you just share with us a bit of your personal story about how you got into cycling and how you discovered gravel riding?
Sure. Look, I've been, a long time, called a lifetime mountain biker, having ridden mountain bikes for 20 or 30 years probably. Look, I got a gravel bike probably just over 2 years ago, realising just the benefits. It took me a little bit of time convincing, I must admit. I've long been a fan of single track and I've called myself a reluctant road rider in the past. And it took me a bit of convincing, well, why would I want to ride a drop bar bike on bouncy gravel roads? But I think that was a pretty naive view on things, and realised that it can cross the divide or the gap between mountain bike and road so well, and opens up, ride opportunities that neither other bike provides. So yes, look, as I said, long time mountain biker, sort of relatively new gravel rider in that respect. But no, look, I rode a lot of gravel, especially through winter when the roads are a bit smoother and what have you. And really enjoying it.
Great. So you mentioned to me a bit earlier that you'd gone on a pretty special trip late last year. Can you tell us a bit about that one?
Yeah, look, I've got a bunch of fellas who I ride typically on the road bike with down here along the Great Ocean Road. And once a year we get together for a bit of an off-road adventure, either on mountain bikes or gravel or something like that. So yeah, I think in the last week of November we rode the Tassie Trail, which starts at Devonport in Tasmania and finishes up at Dover down south of Hobart. And we did a final day up to Hobart, principally on gravel as well. So yeah, 6 days through the beautiful Tasmanian wilderness, across the plateau of the Great Lakes and down through some, charismatic little Tasmanian towns. And there was 9 of us on bikes. We did it the easy way. We carried just a change of clothes and stayed in pubs and cabins and things like that each night. But it was a great journey and typical of the adventures that gravel bikes provide.
Oh, that sounds stunning. I'll have to get down there at some point. So as we mentioned in the introduction, you work for Rapid Ascent Event Management. Your portfolio of events is pretty broad and spans across a number of different adventure sport disciplines. So before we sort of go more specifically into your gravel events, can you tell us a bit about the background of the company and the different types of events that you guys put on?
Sure. Look, Rapid Ascent, we've been in operation for 17 or 18 years now. and we run exclusively off-road adventure sports events, mountain biking, gravel, trail running, ultra running, and adventure races. And look, along with my business partner, John Jacoby, we're based down here on the Surf Coast. And at the moment we run about 15 events around the country a year. We do quite a lot in the trail running scene as well. But look, one of our longest running events, in fact, it was the second event we ever ran, was the Otway Odyssey, which is still very close to our heart, being mountain bikers as well and local to our area. But look, we run, quite a number of events here in Victoria, a good number of events actually over in Western Australia as well, and a couple of events in Alice Springs along the Larapita Trail and a mountain bike stage race up there as well.
Yeah, pretty broad. Is the Great Otway Gravel Grind your only gravel ride race event?
At the moment, it is, yeah.
As you said, the mountain bike Otway Odyssey event has been a big part of the business now for a long time. I think, are we up to 17 years this year? Is that right?
Yeah, it's something like that. Yeah, it's a big number, isn't it? It's a long time.
It is. And it's obviously got an excellent reputation in the mountain bike marathon race scene. At what point did you have the idea of adding the gravel event to the program? And was this something the community was asking for, or did you sort of see the opportunity to bring something new to the table there?
Sure. I think this is the 7th year of the Great Otway Gravel Grind. We call it the GOGG. And look, the idea came about through, a mixture of our own idea, thinking that it is a growing discipline or format and would provide, an added opportunity for us and for riders. And it made great sense to partner it with the Otway Odyssey weekend, given the location has access to single track and gravel. But look, there was also a couple of active locals, just all friends of ours here in the Torquay area, Scott Nicholas being one of them, who, was a strong mountain biker and gravel rider who sort of suggests to put the idea in our head as well. So look, I guess with a bit of brainstorming with Scott Nicholas and Adam Kelsall especially, we came up with the format and, settled with it pretty quickly. And it's been growing since day zero or day one.
Excellent. So the event's obviously run in conjunction with the Odyssey mountain bike race over the same weekend. Can you sort of explain why you chose that weekend festival model rather than sort of aiming to deliver a standalone event? Was that a big part of the thinking?
Look, I guess selfishly on our perspective, on the Rapid Ascent perspective, it's a lot easier for us and more cost efficient for us to do it on the same weekend. We can share a lot of infrastructure, personnel and details. And for a while, in fact, the two events were on the same website. But and so that's, I guess, on a logistical, financial perspective. But on a rider's perspective, for many people who come to the Odyssey, it's a real journey. People come from interstate, and this gives them the opportunity to do two races for their travel. A double header weekend, and maybe it was a way of introducing when the GOG started. I guess it was principally road riders who we thought were the market, and road riders didn't really ride single track or ride mountain bikes. So maybe it was a way of trying to mix the two rider types together for a bit of cross-pollination, I guess you could say, bring a few roadies onto mountain bikes and mountain bikers onto gravel. But yeah, look, now it's really, like you've summarised there, it's come together as a real festival weekend of cycling. We take over the town of Forrest and inundate the little village with cyclists of now gravel and mountain bike. So yeah, I think the format works really well. It, as I said, provides the opportunity for some to do back to back, but others just two different codes to mix together at the same place.
I think that's one of the great things about gravel. You sort of get people coming at it from all parts of cycling, whether that be mountain biking or road riding, or even just brand new riders getting attracted to gravel in the first place. So, do you have a sense for how many people do the double versus sort of just come down for the GOG?
Oh, it's only the toughest of the tough.
I can imagine. I was out there last year speaking to a couple of people who had done the Odyssey the day before. I obviously hadn't, and they were certainly feeling it, I think, on day two.
Oh yeah, look, those that do 100k Odyssey mountain bike on Saturday and the 97 GOG on Sunday. Oh look, there's probably between 20 and 50 of them. Whether more who might have raced just 50, a challenging 50k's on Saturday on the mountain bike and tick off either the short or the long course on Sunday. It's probably another 50 or so. So maybe there's 100, across the weekend that do that do 2 events. Look, I haven't researched that figure, but it's not the majority, put it that way.
Yeah. So for those listeners who might not be familiar with the town of Forrest and the broader Otway area, can you sort of paint a picture for us where exactly we're talking and what sort of environment the race passes through?
Sure. So Forrest is a beautiful little township just in the foothills or the hinterlands of the Otway Ranges. It's about 2.5 hours drive from Melbourne. And if people can picture where Lorne is on the Great Ocean Road, it's, basically due inland or directly inland from Lorne, more or less. Forrest, look, was identified to be developed as a mountain bike destination about 17 or 18 years ago, just as our event came on board. It used to be a logging town, but when logging of old growth forests was phased out of the Otways, it was determined that Forrest needed a new future, and mountain biking was to be that future. And so, considerable amount of money was spent on building the mountain bike network, and we've been, conducting the race and engaging with the community there for ever since then, from the full history of the event in that 17 years. So now there's certainly no more logging around, and the community have embraced cycling and tourism, as it wasn't really a tourism town beforehand. There's a great brewery and a couple of cafes and some Airbnbs and things like that. But it's still a town with a permanent population of, gee whiz, probably 200. There's a primary school. That's about it. The next nearest centre is Colac, which is half an hour's drive away, which is probably the nearest secondary school. But it's got a small amount of farming land around it, but it's backed right onto the tall timbered forest of the Otway Ranges, and which are, fortunately for us, permeated with single track and gravel roads. So it's pretty much cycling paradise, really, if you look at it that way. It's got some smooth asphalt going through it too. So it's a really nice little township, and like I said, they really embrace cycling.
Yeah, and I think they've done some new mountain bike trails out there recently. Is that right? They've just opened some more.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, the existing network has been largely unchanged since it started or was built, as I said, 17 or 18 years ago. And look, it's been maintained and still provides for some great cross-country style riding. There's not a lot of gravity style riding in the network at the moment, and maybe they realise that sort of shortcoming and the growing popularity of more gravity style flow trails. They saw some money and just spent a fair bit of that expand the trails into 2 new descents and 1 new climbing track. They've rejigged a couple of other tracks and built this fantastic sealed pump track and things, and a skills area. So yeah, they've expanded the network, and it all provides for a great network, really, for probably enough track there to ride over 2 days. I'd say you wouldn't cover it all in 1 day anyway.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful part of the world down there, and one that's close to my heart, that's for sure. So certainly, as you said, there's a fair bit of hills. There's not much flat road around there. Definitely one for the climbers, the GOGG. Can you tell us a bit about the routes that you offer for this event, and have they changed much over the years, or have you sort of stuck with the same formula?
Sure. So on the GOGG weekend, on the Sunday, we run 2 events. The big ring is a 97-kilometre circuit. It's a figure 8, really, a 97-kilometre circuit. And then a shorter, we call it the little ring 49K circuit as well. Yeah, like you've said, they both include a fair bit of climbing, and the stats in front of me say the big ring's got just over 2,200 meters of climbing. 2 big climbs. Starts at, I think, Forest about 150 meters above sea level, but does a long climb up Delaney's track to the Otway Ridge line, along Mount Sabine track, and then a flowing descent all the way down to the Great Ocean Road, where you see the Otways, see the ocean and smell the salt air, and then a big climb back up and over the range, back across the top and down into Forest. So yeah, 2 big climbs with a bit of undulating track in between, and that shorter circuit sort of misses the Great Ocean Road section. It's a big climb and a bit of undulation and a big descent. So yeah, no, it's nice riding.
Those gravel descents, they descending on gravel might not be the thing that people want to do, but just those particular descents that you've got in this event, they are excellent fun. They're excellent road surfaces, not too steep. It's that descent coming down into Kennet River, I think, was one of the best 20 minutes of my cycling life. Like just so much fun.
Yeah, it's just eye-watering descents through. Look, what is, and we haven't talked too much about the landscape. It's just towering, tall timber forests through there. Fortunately, they haven't chopped them all down by a long stretch, and there's you pretty much got your head in the forest the whole way for that 97K circuit, other than when you're the 10-kilometer stretch along the Great Ocean Road, and there's arcing grass, fern trees that reach over your head on the corners, and moss lines, cuttings through the hills, and tall timber just with the line of the blue sky above you. It makes for some beautiful scenery, whether you're going fast or slow. But certainly those descents, down the Kennet Road to the Great Ocean Road, and I see the riders when they come in down the Kangalang Road to the finish line, and they're absolutely buzzing, and they've just emptied the tank down Kangalang Road into the finish line of the footy ground. So yeah, no, it's a great place to ride.
So one thing I noticed last year is I was just saying just how good these road surfaces are for riding out there. I do a bit of riding around the Surf Coast down near where you are at Anglesey there, and even though it's not that far away, the gravel around Forrest just seems so much smoother, a bit less sketchy. The rocks aren't so big and loose. Do the roads get graded, especially for the race, or do you have any influence over the management of the road surface out there?
Oh, look, that's really nice feedback. I wish we had more say over the grading of the roads or what have you than we do. So no, look, the short answer to your question there is no, they don't get graded, especially for the race, and no, we don't have much influence over the surface condition. So it's probably a reflection of how little traveled the roads are by vehicles year round, really. That means they don't get too blown up at the end of summer or too corrugated or loose. So there was one year, actually the first year or the second year, we did in fact engage a road builder to grade and smooth out one particular section of Kangalang Road that was pretty loose and unsafe. And we spent a fair bit of money, a moderate amount of money there, getting that smoothed out for the safety of the race, which was well and truly worth doing. But that's been the only occasion that we've had to intervene, so to speak, and otherwise the roads pretty well self-maintained or maintained by the council or others who do maintain them year round. But yeah, I agree, they stay smooth and very rideable year round, whilst I just in fact went for a ride around my home roads here at Anglesey just this morning, and I put on Strava saying, gee, it's getting loose and a bit sketchy out there. Just towards the end of summer, the corrugations are starting to grow and the loose rocks are coming. But down the Otways, it's not. It's a lot smoother, and maybe also it's testament to or evidence of the fact that it's a fairly moist environment, and gets a bit of rain year round, and that probably helps smooth out the bumps a fair bit too.
Yeah, so just following on from that, what sort of bikes are people running at this event? Do you have a sort of sense of the optimum tyre width you'd recommend, or sort of other tech questions, gear ratios, that sort of thing? And what other gear should people be carrying with them during the event?
Sure. Look, as the GOGG has grown in years and the size of the gravel community has grown since this event's outset 7 years ago, we've certainly seen more and more gravel bikes, specifically on the start line. Maybe in year one, it was probably well less than 50% of riders were on a gravel bike as opposed to a mountain bike or even a cyclocross bike. So yeah, certainly the number of gravel bikes is growing, and you and probably all the listeners would be well aware of that. In terms of tyre width, look, it's, as you've summarised there, they're pretty smooth roads. You don't have to go super wide or super chunky or anything like that. So I roll a 38 on my bike here, and I reckon that's a set of Gravel Kings, and I reckon they're fantastic for the roads around there. And gear ratios, again, these are 2-wheel drive roads. They're not 4-wheel drive tracks or any steeper sections. So you don't need a real climbing ratio or anything like that. So I'd say whatever comes, I don't know, stock on your bike would be satisfactory. And I for one am a fan of a 2-by setup with gives you a bit more gear range both for up and down. But if you're on a 1-by and have a moderate sized cassette on the back and don't outdo it, then you certainly get your way around the course.
Yeah, I think I saw some guys out there on pretty much rim brakes and very skinny road tires last year. So I think it can be done, certainly.
It certainly can. And look, I'm a big fan of just ride what you've got. I don't Maybe I'm not such a gear nut, and but welcome people, just have an underlying encouragement for people to get out there and give things a go and not get too wound up on their equipment for this event anyway.
Yeah, no, that's great. So the race has a pretty distinctive format compared to the Odyssey. You've incorporated these timeout zones in the course. Can you tell us a bit more about these and what was the thinking behind that sort of format?
Sure. Look, the gravel scene has evolved a fair bit, I guess, and grown, matured, maybe you could say. It was maturing since we started the race 7 years ago. But even then, even irrespective of that, I probably wouldn't change the format. So look, I guess, our ideas are based on our thinking 7 years ago. And like I said, I think that's still pretty current right now to a fair extent. But the 97-kilometre course is divided into four, let's call them race segments, and then with 3 timeout zones, interspersed through that. So for the 97K, the first segment, so to speak, is 33 Ks, taking it from the start line. So it's racing from the start, right up to the top of the ridge at the 33K mark. And then we've got a coffee cart and a water point. And the timeout zone is only about 200 meters long in terms of distance, but it allows you to stop and regroup with your friends, or catch up with your husband or your wife, or stop and refill your water bottle, or, as I said, buy an espresso from the coffee machine up there, which I think is part of the gravel scene, is part of what I see as the gravel culture, that gravel riding's not overly competitive in the most part, or we didn't want an overly competitive gravel event. Maybe that's the way of structuring the answer. We wanted an event that allows riders of all abilities to ride together, both the elite and the weekend warrior and the first timer, and maybe influenced a little bit by the gravity enduro format in mountain biking, where you race the downhill segments, you cruise the liaisons and the climbs, and allows riders of different speeds and abilities to basically share a race together, where in a non-stop format, you see one another at the start and you wait hours for each other at the finish line. That's about it. So the GOGG is, influenced by that as well. So yeah, around that 97 kilometre, as I said, there's a coffee cart at 33K mark. And then when we hit the Great Ocean Road, in fact, there's a 10-kilometre liaison stage along the Great Ocean Road. So people can stop at Wye River at the cafe and go for a swim at the beach or something. And then head back up the climb, going back through that timeout point at the 66K mark, and then at the 83, and then back down into the finish line. So that's sort of some of our thinking. It's our take on the gravel format and what works best, and the race environment and atmosphere that we wanted to provide.
I think it's a great fit for that gravel culture. It's not only are you grateful for the opportunity to stop and catch your breath, you do get that opportunity to meet people and chat and sort of share the day with everyone else. So yeah, I think it's a great format for gravel riding.
Yeah, and look, we do fortunately receive a lot of feedback on that, and really positive. People like the fact they can as they stop and top up the caffeine or wait for a friend, and it just winds back the whole competitive aspect for the weekend warrior a lot, and on an elite perspective at the front, they have their own strategy, which we can talk about later on. So it works really well.
So I see there's a pretty exciting development for the race this year. You've been added to the Grand Fondo World Tour Gravel Series. Can you tell us a bit about this series and what it means for people who are going to be riding the event this year?
Sure. Yeah. Look, we were approached by the Gravel World Series, the World Tour, to be involved with their existing series. It's coordinated by a fella in Andorra, actually, and he conducts an event there, but he's brought together, it's 10 or 15 different events around the world into a gravel series, and with a view to, yes, bring riders together or showcase rides and races to other riders around the world. So there's races in Africa and Asia and North America and Europe and now Australia as well. There's a point structure that allows riders to compare their performance against the other events in the series. So it's not a pure time comparison, but and I won't go into their formula, but there's the ability for me to, compare my performance at the GOGG with the performance of someone who, raced in this African race and see how I performed on a comparative perspective of some accuracy, I guess. They're also, combining points to try and determine a series leader or a series, champion or something like that. But principally, it's about participation, awareness, and cross promotion, and trying to bring riders and riding locations together more than anything else. It's not an official UCI sanctioned series. There's no commissaires coming to check all the courses. It's this guy Danny has a very similar outlook on events and riding and life as us, to be that, the more people on bikes doing this stuff, the better. And, let's not put too much red tape in the way and have qualifications and restrictions and rules and that kind of stuff. It's just getting people out on bikes.
Great. So you market the event as a gravel grind, and we've sort of touched on the competitive aspects of it. So riders are timed over the 4 segments, and the front of the race is one for the fast guys. I think it's sort of been referred to in some circles, gravel racing, as a bit of a mullet setup. You get that business up the front with the elite racers and then a bit of a party at the back with the recreational riders. You certainly do attract some really strong domestic riders. I didn't get much of a chance to see the front of the race during my participation last year. Can you share a bit about what goes on up there? What's the vibe? Is it sort of ultra competitive, or do even those guys take the racing a bit less seriously than perhaps they would a road race or even the more established mountain bike marathon races, for instance?
Look, it's a good question, and hard for me to touch on because I'm not at the front of the field either, Tristan, on race day. But I certainly chat to them at the finish line, and they come back saying, "We've just had a bloody great day out on our bikes." And yeah, they've probably heard each other up the climbs, but they've stopped for coffee halfway around. Like, how freaking cool is that? That the front of the field are stopping for an espresso and a bit of a chat before it's game on again. So the way I think their strategy out to win the race, it comes down to the first segment. So I mentioned earlier on, the first segment's 33 k's long. It's got a big climb of probably 700 meters of climbing or more. And so generally the first rider, they hit each other up that first climb and then regroup at the water point. And basically whoever gets to that first water point with a time margin needs only to sit on the wheel of everybody else for the rest of the race. So I think that's, Tasman, who's won the event a couple of times, his tactic, as well as everybody else's, is try and get a bit of a gap going into that first segment. And then, his work is done. Then maybe it's how risky he wants to be on the descents. And I know some people have tried to get a bit of a gap on descents, but you probably win races going uphill rather than downhill quickly. So yeah, look, they come back, they're pumped, they've had a good chat, they've stopped for coffee, and most of the time they've had a beautiful scenic ride through a nice part of the world, and they're pretty enthusiastic about it. So yes, it's dare I say, I'm just really stoked. I'm proud that we've got a format that the elite riders can have a great day at, as well as the weekend warriors and those who are new to the sport can have a great day at as well. And everyone can line up side by side at the start line, and with national champions or international riders and things, through to, as I said, first timers all out there, being stoked to ride bikes. And like I keep saying, that's sort of what it's all about for me.
It's good to hear that they stopped for a coffee. I was sort of a bit curious about whether they stopped at those points or not and just powered through. But no, it's good to hear that they sort of embrace that gravel culture a bit as well.
Yeah, they're stopping, but they're very much, again, I've not seen it, but from what I've heard, they're very much keeping an eye on each other up there. Because if someone,
gets
out of the time segment before them and they can't catch them, then, there's suddenly a break in the field. So, I think it's by mutual agreement. Everyone looks around, okay, we're ready to go. Okay, let's go. And they'll restart themselves.
Do you recall what sort of times they're setting at the front for that 97-kilometer big ring? It's pretty quick from memory, I think.
No, I can't remember. It's in the 3.5 hour margin mark, I think, like that. So it's certainly under 4 hours, I seem to think. But no, I can't remember exactly.
So as you said, Tasman Nankervis took out the title last year. A really strong guy on the domestic scene with a big mountain bike background. Similarly, Courtney Sherwell took out the women's title, and we saw how strong she was going on to win the inaugural Dirty Warnie. I saw on Instagram the other day that you'd posted that the newly crowned Tour Down Under champion, Jay Vine, was also a previous winner of the GOGG in 2018. You've had other big names, Peter Mullins, Brendan Johnson, some other big hitters down at the event. Last year, I loved sharing the start line with guys like Mitch Docker and Simon Gerrans. Is it a focus for Rapid Ascent to try and attract this big name talent, or is it more sort of a build it and they will come sort of thing?
Yeah, very much the latter, really. Build it and they will come. As I said, it's our endeavour to conduct any events in our portfolio such that it embraces, challenges, and welcomes riders of all abilities. So no, we don't pay guys to come or really chase the elite end of the field. And stoke Simon. I didn't know Simon was coming, nor Mitch Docker actually. Simon just there's a funny story there. He rocked up to enter on the day, and actually John's son was manning the registration tent, as well as our other crew were manning the registration tent, and Simon came to enter, and I think maybe Fergus was writing down his details or entering his details in the computer. Simon, okay, Gerrans, okay, how do you spell that, please? Just in his absolute 19-year-old naivety, didn't fully recognise who, Simon Gerrans was at the time. And Simon wasn't put out by that. He came for a good ride with his mates. And I think in fact, the cycling tips guys, encouraged them to come down for a bit of a ride. And Albo and Wade come down each year and race it and encourage Mitch and Simon to come down. And yeah, they came and had a great ride. So that's really nice.
Oh, great. So women's cycling has been much maligned, I think it's fair to say, for a long time. It seems like they're finally starting to get the sort of coverage that it deserves. Can you share with us your experience of how both female racing and participation has changed over your time running the GOGG?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question. Look, we conduct more through our Otway Odyssey, the mountain bike events, a specific program to encourage and support female competitive mountain bikers, or encourage more female riders to enter races and feel confident and comfortable entering races. And we call this program the Odyssey Angels, and it's been running for 7 or 8 years, where we provide a whole range of initiatives and support to encourage participation, from closed Facebook groups where they can engage and ask questions that are limited to women only, to a meet and greet nights beforehand, to a female-only start on the 30K mountain bike, and a range of other initiatives. So we're trying to extend that across the gravel grind as well. So look, that's certainly starting to have some success, or we're seeing some increase in female participation in the mountain bike side of things, as well as on the gravel as well. With maybe 20%. I was looking at the numbers before. About 20% of our gravel grinders are typically women, and probably 15 to 20 across our mountain bike races the day before. So we try to provide an environment that's welcoming for both genders.
Are you seeing growth in the participation of women year on year, or?
Yeah, it's a slow growth, but yes, and again, we received some lovely feedback from women who have felt enabled and encouraged and not confronted to attend a pretty blokey scene. Dare I say, mountain bike races can be pretty blokey. It's a lot of testosterone and competitiveness and equipment and things that are a bit scary for those men or women who are unaccustomed or new or still learning the sport. So yeah, numbers are growing, and the strength of those women that do ride is and their confidence is growing year on year as well.
So gravel racing sort of has its heart, obviously, over in the US. There's been a bit of debate over there recently about safety at the front of large gravel events, where you get those amateurs and pros mixing in the same bunch. There's also been a lot of discussion there about how to deliver the best racing experience for the elite women in these mass start events, and particularly how we can cover them in terms of coverage. An event like Unbound Gravel in the States, they're taking measures to start the men's and women's elite fields marginally ahead of the age group athletes. Is this something you'd consider for GOGG, or do you not seem to have sort of the same issues we're seeing over there?
Look, I don't think we have the same issues yet. I say yet. The numbers and the competitiveness and the professionalism of gravel riders and racing and racers is still growing in Australia. So I don't think we're there yet. I'm not ruling that out down the track if more and more elites come and it becomes more and more competitive and this aggro or issues. We do tackle those types of issues with our mountain bike race on the 100k event, which offers a decent amount of prize money up the front and attracts the most competitive men and women mountain bikers over the 100k course. So there we do start elite females only half an hour before the main bunch, so they have a clean race against one another without interference or pacing by men or others. And in terms of the men, they start at the front of the main field of the 100k race. So yeah, I guess we've got some experience with that with the mountain bike scene, but I just don't think we're there yet or have that need yet at the gravel grind. And like I said, our event is designed. Look, it's certainly competitive, and I don't want to say those at the front of the field aren't racing to win, but it's got a slightly more chilled vibe at this stage anyway.
So just one last question about the elite racing side of things. We've seen a trend overseas, particular with increasing media coverage of these big gravel events. I know Flow Bikes is live streaming Unbound Gravel these days. Obviously, we're talking a much smaller scale here, but I noticed at the inaugural Dirty Warnie last year, they tried to provide some live coverage of the race via their Instagram. Is this something you've explored with your races, or do you see this being something that may become part of the event in the future as we see increasing interest?
Oh, look, it's not something I've given a great deal of thought to at this stage. We want to focus more on running a great race, great safe race and experience for those who are there on the day. And yeah, we provide, social media updates and coverage throughout the day, but certainly not a live feed of footage and what have you. Look, if the event grows big enough that there's a big enough audience and enough money and sponsorship or whatever to warrant something like that, we'd look at it. But we're not there yet, and as I said, really want to focus more on providing a great experience for those who are there at the time, rather than tipping what would be a lot of money and effort into coverage. I'm just not sure there's the audience there at the moment. But as I said, I think you said there the gravel scene in North America is a lot more progressed than we are here. So, if we're 10 years behind, then maybe we will be doing it in 10 years, but we don't see the need to do it just yet.
Fair enough. So as I said, I don't want to focus too much on the front of the race. I think the real beauty of these events is that they provide a great experience for the everyday athlete. I think the time-sectioned approach you've taken, as we've said, is a really great one that allows people to stop and enjoy the environment and the community, but still get the opportunity to challenge themselves against the clock. I think you mentioned before you get some good feedback on this formula from participants. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. From the front of the field to the middle and the back, it's a format that works well for us. Yeah.
Do you have a sense for how the gravel community has developed over the time you've been running this event? Is it sort of always been a more relaxed social vibe, or is it sort of starting to carve out its own identity that's quite unique compared to the mountain biking or the road cycling?
Yeah, the latter there. I think the gravel scene is developing its own culture, its own community, and its own people who would call themselves, I'm a gravel rider. I'm not a mountain biker and I'm not a road rider. I'm into riding gravel. And so, yeah, I think the scene is maturing, growing, and yeah, has a following of its own. But still, a community that welcomes mountain bikers to come and give it a go on their mountain bike, or a roadie to come and give it a go on their road bike, or borrow something else from someone. So yeah, it's certainly developing and maturing, and people now understand the format more than they did 7 years ago when we started the event. And so it's exciting to be part of.
I think you probably saw early on people coming to gravel were either coming at it as sort of mountain bikers or as roadies coming to gravel. Do you think now gravel is a sort of a big enough discipline that it's sort of becoming the first introduction of the sport for new cyclists? Cyclists are looking at their different options and choosing, gravel's where I want to start my journey. And are you seeing that in terms of the people who are coming down to your events?
Oh, it's a good question. Look, I'd say yes. Yes. So look, I'm a big convert and believer of the gravel format, as we said at the outset there. And I just for the there's so many aspects I like, of which I'm sure all the listeners will engage with as well. The number one, the places you can get to that you wouldn't otherwise ride on your mountain bike or your road bike. And I say that on an adventure and landscape and wilderness perspective. And then the traffic-free roads. It just feels like a safe place to ride. I was out for an hour and 40 minutes this morning on gravel roads, and I saw 3 cars. How good's that? So it makes sense to me that it's building its own following, and it's where some riders might go to first for those types of reasons. It's a format where you don't need a skill set to ride single track or ride over a log or be able to do a jump or carve a berm like you can on a mountain bike. It's welcoming of riders of all abilities or of no ability, shall I say, to come and get on a bike. So yeah, it probably is or it certainly should be a place where people can get into the sport of cycling for the first time.
That's great. You only saw 3 cars. I mean, down where you are, it's peak holiday season still, and that's probably the busiest time of year is 3 cars on a ride.
I could have gone on the Great Ocean Road down to Lawn and back. And look, I've sport for ride options. There's not a lot of choice. There's one asphalt road in and out of Anglesey. That's about it. But yeah, I would have had 300 cars on the Great Ocean Road. So yeah, it was a nice option this morning.
As we said a bit earlier, it's definitely a bit of a festival weekend you put on down there at Forrest. Can you tell us a bit about the other experiences on offer for the participants and guests to the event? And what are they able to do to make the most of their weekend down there?
Sure. Look, the mountain bike race on Saturday follows a cloverleaf course with the football ground. The Forrest football ground is the middle of that cloverleaf. So I say cloverleaf in that it starts at the football ground. They go out and do a 30K loop. They come back to the football ground. They do another 40K loop and back to the football ground and so on. So as a result, on the Saturday, it's got a real an opportunity for the audience to engage and see their rider and cheer them on. And there's riders coming through from 9 o'clock in the morning all day. And as a result, we have quite an extensive expo of sponsor stands, food, tents, live music, kids entertainments, bike racks and race HQ, bar and tables and chairs and umbrellas and things like that. And that certainly exists throughout the Sunday gravel grind as well, whilst the rides on Sunday don't loop through in that figure 8 format. With the sequence starts, the 97K starts earlier at 8 o'clock, I think, and the 49K starts at 9 o'clock. Then whilst the gravel riders are out riding, we conduct a 30K mountain bike race and they come back through. So there's a bit of activity going on. We do a kids ride as well at the same time. So fill the sort of expo area with families and kids. And just as all that sort of winding up, we start to get the gravel riders coming back into the finish line. So there is, dare I say, there's stuff happening all day on Saturday especially, but also on Sunday. So, non-riding husbands and wives and kids should also feel welcome to come down to the event to engage with that, whether it's to ride a bike in one of those shorter options on the mountain bike side of things, or to go up to the West Barwon Reservoir and check it out, or walk through the rainforest, or go for coffee and then come back and see their loved one finish. So it's you put the term festival weekend, and that's something we aspire to, is to have a festival weekend down there for riders of all disciplines and non-riders as well, to a fair extent as well.
Is there much happening on Saturday night between the 2 races?
Yeah, the Forest Brewery always put on some live music, and obviously great beer and great food out the front of the brewery and on the main street as well. And the pub in Forest also welcomes riders and others with beer and entertainment and food and things. So and with the whole township being taken over, the caravan park full to the brim with riders and families and caravans and kids getting out on bikes and building jumps or doing whatever. It's just a nice scene that makes me smile to see people out there meeting one another and sharing the experience and having fun, no matter what their ability or what their discipline is.
Yeah, it's always great to sort of take over a town with people with like-minded sort of interests. You're surrounded by other people who love bikes, which is just great.
Yeah.
So from a commercial side of things, it's obviously a growing segment of the cycling market. Are you seeing increasing interest from brands and businesses wanting to partner with you to get involved with GOGG?
Look, we're very grateful for the long-term partnership we've had with Focus and Cervelo. So Pond Cycling Australia, based out of Adelaide, are the presenting partner of both events. So the official names of them being the Great Otway Gravel Grind presented by Focus and the Otway Odyssey presented by Focus. And across Focus and Cervelo, they do a great range of mountain bike and gravel and road and cyclocross bikes, as all listeners would be aware of. In terms of involvement from other brands, maybe a bit of a hard question to answer. Hard for the industry, having been through the turmoil of COVID and the undersupply of equipment and the oversupply and the lockdowns and things like that. So we're not flush with sponsors, put it that way. And if there's anybody listening who wants to get involved, then give me a call. We think there's great opportunity, but is there increasing interest from brands and businesses wanting to partner with it, which was your question? Then I'd say to a small degree, but it hasn't taken off, put it that way. Not just yet.
Yeah. I think one of the real advantages of these events is that they're able to attract tourism to regional towns, particularly events like yours. We've sort of spoken a little bit about the town of Forrest. It's obviously been focusing on mountain bike tourism for a while now, and I think mountain bike tourism has really brought this town back from the brink after it went through a real slump with the end of the sort of forestry industry. Obviously, you've got a pretty good relationship with local businesses there, and they're pretty supportive of what you're doing.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, and I can't express our thanks enough to the Forrest community and the businesses there for the welcome they've given us over the last 17 years. I feel I don't live in Forrest. It's 45 minutes drive away from where I live. But it almost feels like home whenever I return back there. I feel that we've been through a lot. I mean, we've run this race on the last weekend of February every year for 17 years. And we've seen local kids who started out, riding on balance bikes around the kids' course and now riding 100Ks and things like that. So, I think we understand each other and I feel really honoured to have been part of that that rebuild or re-establishment of Forrest as a cycling town rather than a logging town. And so whenever I stop in for a ride, I always so I'm no local, but I always seem to find someone to bump into who I know and have a chat to. So it's a pretty nice little community.
So following on from those last two questions, is Rapid Ascent sort of looking at opportunities to add more gravel events to the portfolio? Is this where you see some opportunities to establish some new events in new areas, or you're sort of happy with what you're doing?
Well, Tristan, I can't let the cat out of the bag, okay? But we might be working on another gravel idea, and I'll give away two comments, being interstate and multi-day. So
very exciting.
We'll see how that evolves.
Might have to get you back on the pod once that's all announced, and we can do a preview.
Exciting. We've got a bit of work to do and some ideas, but no, we're trying to pursue a new idea somewhere. So I'll let you know.
Great. So obviously we're in a really exciting time for gravel riding in Australia. Events like yours going from strength to strength. Do you see any challenges or roadblocks in the future that might pose a threat to the future of these events?
Oh, look, keeping it safe is obviously the number one prerogative for any event company, or it certainly should be. And whether numbers get too big to have group mass starts or is something we need to remain aware of. Road condition, obviously something to remain aware of. And the amount of other vehicle traffic on the roads as well. So our roads aren't officially closed during the GOGG, and we're open and honest about that. We have traffic advisory signage out there telling drivers that there's an event on. We want to ensure that safety is the number one thing. If people are paying an entry fee, that's what you deserve more than anything else. So, at the moment, our format is sustainable, but like I said, we're keeping an eye on those things to ensure that it stays safe for all riders. And, so that's probably a challenge. Beyond that, there's plenty of space to welcome more people.
Great. So, particularly in the US where gravel cycling is really big, there seems to be this tendency for gravel events to sort of edge into the ultra marathon sort of distances, 100, 200 mile sort of epic rides. Most of the gravel events on offer here in Australia, including the GOGG, tend to be much shorter. Last year, we saw the introduction of Dirty Warney with a 240 kilometre option. I think that's probably the longest sort of official event on offer in Australia. Do you have any ideas why there seems to be this discrepancy? And do you think, is there a scope or demand for introduction of these sort of ultra marathon gravel events in Australia?
It's a fascinating question, isn't it? And I don't have a real answer. I guess we, as has hopefully been evident throughout our conversation, we try to run races in a format that is welcoming of riders of all abilities or multiple abilities. And I guess we see that ultra distance riding event as a big barrier for a lot of people, and thus have shied away from it. So, but look, we run ultra distance running events, 100K running events, and things like that, where we get strong entry numbers. So, yeah. And people, rise to the challenge or whatever terminology you want to come up with. So look, at the moment, no, we don't have any plans to, introduce a longer 100 mile or 200 mile format or version. And I guess we'll keep our finger on the pulse or keep looking to see what we think may or may not work on a business perspective and try and respond to that, as well as, welcoming your feedback and very much the feedback of our riders as to what they want, and we'll try and match that with what makes financial sense. But no, we're at this stage not attracted in the ultra distance gravel format.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm not sure it really appeals to that many people. It sort of looks good on paper, but the idea of riding for 15 hours, I think in reality is probably not that enjoyable.
Yeah, my bum's sore just thinking about that. Yeah.
So just sort of as we start to wrap up, where do you see the GOGG heading in the next 5 to 10 years? Are we expecting continual growth or any diversification in the sort of events that you're offering on this particular weekend in terms of gravel?
Oh, look, 5 to 10 years is a long time in the cycling industry. I think it's 5 to 10 years ago we weren't even riding 29ers on a mountain bike, or I didn't really know that gravel existed much. So it's that type of time frame's hard to respond to. I'd like to see continual growth. I would be expecting continual growth. I think we're now up to about 500 riders in the gravel events on Sunday. In the first year we had 240 riders. So our event hasn't exploded in numbers. It's had a nice growth. It's maintained this somewhat niche, friendly vibe to it throughout that growth without, getting too big too soon. Diversification. Look, I've said earlier just now that at the moment we're not looking at a longer option, but if we think there's actually an interest in that, or that's the way to go, then we're not shy of changing the format and responding to people's feedback and giving people what they want. So, but look, in the short term, I think we'll stay pretty much with the current format and would just expect numbers to, slowly grow and hopefully we can grow female participation is probably one of our biggest goals.
Excellent. Sam, thanks so much for giving up your time to chat with us today and for supporting the start of this little project. It's a really great event you put on down in Forrest. I'm really excited to try and get down there again in a few weeks' time for 2023's edition. For those listening, I'd highly recommend getting down to this event. Registrations, they're still open for the event on the 26th of Feb. Pick your distance, challenge yourself. It's a really spectacular place to ride your bike, and the guys at Rapid Ascent put on a really great event. Sam, did you want to add anything else? Do you want to do a little plug for registrations for this year's event?
I think you've just done that for me, Tristan. So I appreciate the opportunity to have a chat to you and the time of the listeners and wish you good luck with the podcast series and look forward to seeing you and as many listeners as possible, down on the gravel roads or the single track around Forrest in February. It's a great weekend.
Great, thanks very much. And where can people go to find out a bit more?
Sure. So the GOGG website is the GOGG.com.au, and that's it's pretty easy to follow there. It's got course maps and profiles and schedules, and rules and details and things like that. There's a lot of, in fact, there's a fantastic training program. If anyone's new to riding gravel, or how do I ride that far, there's a very well regarded and considered training program that can be downloaded there with day-by-day sessions. So check out that type of information on the website as well.
Great. Thanks, Sam. Thanks very much for joining us.
Sure. Thanks, Tristan.
So that's a wrap for our chat with Sam all about the GOGG. Please remember to subscribe to this podcast so you get all of our latest episodes dropping right into your feed. And please remember to follow us as well on Instagram at the Gravel Cycling Australia podcast. Cheers. We'll catch you next time.